Welcome back to the Advent Calendar House, the official holiday podcast for people who organize meetings with 3 different versions of themselves, all of whom are action heroes. Today we're skating on thin ice back to 1993 for a very educational trip to Bluffington to rewatch Doug's Christmas Story. I am bitter, ousted politician with a microphone and a self-help line, Mike Westfall. And joining me is weaponized dessert maker and host of the Pop Arena YouTube channel. Please welcome Greg Stevens. Hello, Greg.
Hello. Why does this cupcake taste like gunpowder?
You tell me. Greg, thank you for coming on to the show. We've known each other online for, about 17 years now, I think.
Something like that, yeah.
And I love what you've been doing these past few years on YouTube, especially relevant to this show, Knickknacks. You want to briefly plug that?
Yeah, I believe you mentioned it on this podcast before, but Knickknacks is a show-by-show history retrospective of the channel Nickelodeon. It covers every single show that ever aired on the channel. And it's been going for 3 years, and we've made it all the way to 1987. So that should tell you how extensive this project is.
It's so extensive, and I really like that you're going in chronological order, at least as far as the beginning on, or as far as it beginning on Nickelodeon goes, because it helped bring back to my consciousness a lot of things I haven't watched or thought about in a very, very, very long time. And then I remember being really into them as a kid, like Belle and Sebastian and Spartacus and the Sun Beneath the Sea. For some reason, I watched a lot of that.
Yeah, part of the reason I started the project was a lot of histories of Nickelodeon cut so much of the channel's content out. For most history retrospectives, you might get a mention of Pinwheel, but mostly you start with "You can't do that on television."
Wow, really?
And then and then maybe some stuff happens. Maybe someone will mention Double Dare, and then you get to 1991, the Nicktoons, and everything takes off after that. Like the first 10 years of Nickelodeon's history is incredibly underrepresented in these histories. So that's a main part of the motivation in the Knickknacks project.
Well, thank you. You've done an amazing job so far. That amazes me, just, I guess, because of my own memory of that time. And it's not like a really well-formed memory, but as you've been getting to each of these shows, it's like, oh, yeah, but to your point, here's where things really take off. We're talking about Doug, the first officially branded Nicktoon.
Yes. And the last of the original trilogy to get a Christmas episode.
Yes. Oh, that goes really late into its own run. This Christmas episode aired December 12th, 1993, during its last season on Nickelodeon before Disney acquired Jim Jenkins' Jumbo Pictures. Have you watched a lot of Disney's Doug?
I have. It's not as atrocious as a lot of people would say. I think a lot of the criticism for it goes to kind of that base, this is different, and I don't like things that are different kind of want to hold on to the past instinct. It's not as good as Nickelodeon's Doug. I'll concede that. But it's far from a bad show.
That's the impression I got, because I admittedly have not seen a lot of Disney's Doug. I can see they changed quite a bit when they moved it over, but from the little I've seen, it doesn't look bad at all.
No.
Mentioned Jim Jenkins created Doug. This show is his baby, but I didn't realize until you brought it up on Knickknacks that he got his start at Nickelodeon on the first show, Pinwheel.
Yes, Jim Jenkins is a kind of a legacy figure for Nickelodeon. He was there on day one. He was a puppeteer and art designer for Pinwheel, Nickelodeon's very first show. He also did acting and art design for some of their much less remembered first couple of shows like By the Way and Hocus Focus. And so he had this long history with Nickelodeon, left, kind of pursued animation, created Doug as a commercial character that he would use for like orange juice commercials or the USA Network. He created Doug for those. And then when Nickelodeon was looking for original animation, here's this trusted creative figure, not a huge creative figure, but a trusted legacy figure with a kind of a character already in the works.
Yeah, and I did go back and I did find these commercials you were talking about. Like it was a station ID for USA Network, and it's a really early version of Doug, and even Porkchop, his dog, is there in some form. And then there's this other one for Florida Citrus that is clearly it's closer to the Doug that we know. Same kid, green vest and everything.
Except in that commercial, I think he's supposed to be an adult in that commercial.
Oh, is he? Oh dear.
I think so, which is it's kind of like you can't really age the Doug character out of context. Like there's no age signifiers on him at all.
Nope.
Like he's almost got like adult, kind of that almost a balding thing with the way his hair's drawn.
Yeah.
That you could pass him off as an adult in a certain context.
Well, in the commercial, he's wearing pants, so grown-ups wear pants.
Exactly.
But I remember, do you have any memory of the amount of hype surrounding the first set of Nicktoons?
Oh yeah, that's one of my. I think I'm definitely a bit younger than you, but I was just at that right age to remember the initial hype for the first three Nicktoons, which was Doug, Rugrats, and Ren and Stimpy. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I couldn't watch the premiere because they aired it at like into the evening, and past 6 p.m. is adult TV time. They take over the TV, mm-hmm. So I missed the premiere completely.
I remember the premiere being a huge deal. They'd have these commercial programs declaring August 11th, 1991 to become a historic date, which, well, I remembered it almost 30 years later from those. So mission accomplished, I guess. But
yeah.
I don't think I caught the initial premiere, but I remember that Sunday morning being parked in front of my TV so I wouldn't miss it. And there's Doug.
Well, that was kind of the like kids born a bit after, more later 90s kids. They have that who's the best starter Pokemon, Bulbasaur, Squirtle, or Charmander. For me, it's what's the best Nicktoon, Doug, Rugrats, and Ren and Stimpy. I think it's Doug. What's your answer?
My answer is also Doug, though. As a kid, I probably would have leaned into Ren and Stimpy just because I met a friend at school that year. I was in 6th grade that year, and he was all about Ren and Stimpy. But I kind of leaned toward Doug. Something about Doug just spoke to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Doug is... I think Doug... You would never think of it because it's such a calm-ish, kind of quaint cartoon.
Yeah.
But there really wasn't anything like it before 1991. Like you can follow trends for the other two shows. Mm-hmm. Like Rugrats, very good show, but I don't think that would have happened without the previous market of baby-fied character cartoons like Muppet Babies and Tom and Jerry Kids. That kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I think Rugrats kind of built off of that with original characters, and Ren and Stimpy. That's a much more scatological take on kind of a Looney Tunes logic world. A slice of life cartoon like this. I think the only thing that precedes this that's like that is probably Peanuts.
Wow, I think you're right. Now that you put it in that context, Doug is very much 90s Peanuts, except maybe a little less geared toward the adults because, Peanuts have those adult jokes. Sally and the Pumpkin Patch, you owe me restitution, which no 5-year-old's going to get, but a 5-year-old might be able to understand what Doug's going through a little bit, maybe a little too young, but it's closer than you owe me restitution.
Yeah, Peanuts definitely has a much more cynical edge to it than Doug. There's really not a whole lot you can compare it to before Doug, but there's a ton you can compare it to after Doug. After Doug, you get Hey Arnold, you get Recess, you get As Told by Ginger, Pepper Ann, shows like that I think Doug really opened the door for.
That's a good point. Now that you mention all of those, I'm like, yeah, you're right. This is really not the first of its kind, but definitely did open that sort of door for more of that content. I feel like it was absolutely for the best. So,
yeah.
Well, let's dive into this Christmas episode, or maybe not because the lake's frozen, but
I am very much of the theory that they wrote the pork chop plot stuff first, then realized, okay, well, this plot involves a frozen pond. We're going to be drawing Bluffington all snowy anyway. We might as well make it the Christmas episode.
Oh, yeah. That's exactly what's going on here. It's titled Doug's Christmas Story. It takes place around Christmas. It's about as Christmassy as Die Hard. So I'm calling it a Christmas special because that's what the title says. But as we find out, we'll see. It veers way off the bright lights and Christmas joy that we're used to for these. But let's do it. It's a few days before Christmas in Doug's hometown of Bluffington, and all his friends and similarly aged peers are out skating and playing hockey on Lucky Duck Lake. Very hard nod to Charlie Brown here, but it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
What I really like about this scene is how not every kid has professional hockey equipment, so they just grabbed something close enough, and that made it feel real to me, because that's exactly what my friends and I would have done.
Oh, same here.
Yeah, Doug's using a rake as a stick.
They're using a pine cone as a puck.
Yes. I think his pal Skeeter's using a kitchen broom. Meanwhile, Dog's Doug Porkchop kind of slides through the middle of the game, miraculously doesn't get hit with a hockey stick, and then ends up sliding toward a dangerous corner of the lake where a sign warns thin ice, the Chekhov's gun of frozen ponds.
Who do you think put the sign there? Like, what does that job entail? Just crossing your fingers, tying a rope around your waist in a tree, and just hoping for the best?
Yeah, they drew straws or picked the lightest person in the Parks and Rec office.
We see a bunch of the Doug, the characters from Doug here. Oddly missing, no Roger Klotz.
Yeah.
Roger Klotz is completely absent from this episode.
Like, I looked for him in this opening scene after it was over, thinking, was Roger in this? No, Roger's nowhere. That's a good point to start talking about our voice cast. I think we'll touch on him as we go, but Doug Funny and Roger, who's not here, is Billy West.
Dear Journal, funny how on the brink of the best holiday of the whole year, the worst thing that could possibly happen happened.
And I think this, by virtue of airing an hour before Ren and Stimpy, might be most people's introduction to Billy West.
Yes, I think he had one thing before this, which was the very, very short-lived Benny and Cecil revival in the late 80s, which got like 5 episodes and then was dropped.
Yup. Because ABC pulled it amid rising tensions with the revival's creator, John Crick-Falusi. Hindsight's 2020, kids.
Good old John K.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look it up, kids, if you're wondering why we're kind of grimacing audibly. The ice is, in fact, so thin that it cracks perfectly around the warning sign, causing it to plunge in the water. So Doug's classmate, BB, doesn't see it when she goes to fetch the pinecone puck on thin ice. Never mind the large, very visible cracks. She misses those entirely.
She's immensely unaware of her surroundings in this.
Go away, Porkchop. I'm busy.
BB is played by Alice Playton, whose voice I first encountered in a 1975 cartoon. Are you familiar with the Maurice Sendak musical Really Rosie with Carole King?
I know it. I know the title. I've not seen it.
Okay, so Alice Playton is the alligator from the storybook Alligators All Around in that. I also know her as the voice of first generation My Little Pony Baby Lickety Split.
Ooh.
And in the movie Legend, she was Darkness's goblin minion Blix.
Ah, I think I know that one. Yeah.
Yes. But BB, there's now a visible hole in the ice and cracks going increasingly large around it. But nope, gotta get that pine cone. And despite Porkchop's efforts to keep her away, he decides the only way to get her to safety is to grab onto her leg and pull her away with his teeth, because she's a dog. And if you haven't seen one, you already know where this is going now. BB howls in pain, thinking Porkchop's attacking her. And of course, that's how everybody else who saw it interpreted it, telling Doug his dog bit BB. And the shocked Doug immediately tells him he's a bad dog. And that's the opening.
Yep. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everyone. I'll touch on a few other voices here because we kind of hear them very briefly. The voice of Skeeter and Porkchop.
Now, Skeet.
Oh, I feel sick.
And Doug's lovely, lovely soundtrack of mouth sounds is the delightful Fred Newman.
Yes, another legacy figure for Nickelodeon, as he was the host of Nickelodeon's first original talk show, Livewire.
Yeah, I have faint memories of Livewire. I don't know if I've ever actually watched it as a kid or if I just remember seeing commercials for it. The thing I remember Fred Newman from first is he was the co-host of the all-new Mickey Mouse Club in 1989.
Yes, that's the thing he did right after Livewire.
Okay.
He jumped ship.
Okay.
Turncoat.
And I discovered pretty early into Doug that he was doing the voices and the background noises for that too, so...
Yes, that classic boo, 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 boo.
And lastly, she's barely in this episode too, but we've got to talk about Patty Mayonnaise.
Yes.
There's the pine cone we were using for a puck.
Voiced by Constance Schulman. If you watched Orange is the New Black, she's Yoga Jones.
Mm-hmm. You get Constance Schulman when you want a character to sound like Constance Schulman.
Yes. I also remember immediately recognizing her voice in Weekend at Bernie's 2. She's this tour guide on the submarine tour. I haven't watched Weekend at Bernie's 2 in years and years. It was one of those things that was on HBO, and I just decided, yeah, I guess I'm watching this. And they go into this submarine tour, and the tour guide starts speaking, and I'm like, that's Patty Mayonnaise.
Yeah, she never puts any variance on the voice. She has one voice, and that's what she does.
And she does it well.
She does it very well. Not much in this episode. I don't think she has a line until like the very end.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we wait until then, but we see her here. And that's it for now. We catch up with Doug back home, continuing to lecture and scold Porkchop outside his doghouse, which I forgot is an igloo all the time, not just for Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
Porkchop tries to plead his case, but despite having bipedal tendencies and a satellite dish on his igloo doghouse, is still a dog and can only communicate with dog noises.
But he's clearly an incredibly intelligent and sentient dog, though.
Oh, yeah.
I think who has I guess has a TV in his igloo because he has a satellite dish, and also, as we'll later learn, is an incredibly active part of the community.
Oh, yes.
I feel like at some point you got to develop like a proper communication system with this guy.
You would think.
Like teach him to write.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Teach him to write. But until then, he's trying to pantomime his attempt to keep BB away from the thin ice, but Doug doesn't understand. He's still mad. So he makes Porkchop go in his igloo and think about what he did, while Doug goes out Christmas shopping with his sister Judy.
Come on, Dougie. Only 2 more Christmas shopping hours until Mom gets home.
Voiced by Becca Lish, who's apparently was also a regular voice on MTV's Celebrity Deathmatch as correspondent Stacy Cornbread. But she was simply credited as Ms. L. That's MZ.L.
I mean, granted, if I wouldn't want to be associated with Celebrity Deathmatch either. One thing I forgot coming back to this show is how all the cars look like the car Homer Simpson designed in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
You're right. It's like a mix between that and I think they're trying to... They remind me of the Jetsons' little spaceships.
Yeah.
But they do end up looking more like Homer's car. Good reference point. Thank you. But while they go shopping, we tune into K-Bluff Radio and a one-man call-in talk show, he said on the podcast, hosted by Bluffington's now former mayor, Bob White.
Next caller.
Hello, Mayor? Is it all right if I still call you Mayor?
Well, as you know, due to a fluke election, I'm not the official mayor at the moment. But since the current mayor is away for the week...
Tippy creamed him at the polls.
Vote for me. And I didn't realize as a kid that the voice of the mayor was Greg Lee from Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego?
Yep.
Did you know that as a kid?
As a kid, no.
Okay.
I never put voices together. I was really bad at that as a kid.
I hear it now, but when I first found out, I remember being really surprised. Not Joker was Mark Hamill surprised, but up there. So the former mayor is on the air. And if you just thought, oh boy, politician with a radio show and a cartoon for children, then buckle up because this sets up the rest of the dang episode.
Yep.
Boy, am I glad we're recording this after election week.
Yes, it's seeing an off-color politician try to fib his way into good graces is reads a lot differently a week ago.
Yeah. This is about to get really interesting. Someone calls in to talk about the dog who attacked that poor girl, and the ex-mayor jumps out of his chair. What? But we leave him for now and catch up with Doug and Judy at the mall, not really shopping together as much as they're shopping next to each other.
Yes.
Because Doug's going on about feeling like he was too hard on Porkchop while Judy's trying to decide which golf club to get for her dad, and neither's listening to what the other's saying. That's a running theme in this whole special. No one's listening to anybody else.
Nope. I do find the golf club gag. It's incredible. It's very much a dad-ish joke. I know. Dad needs a new 9 iron. I'll buy a 7 and a 2.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's simple, but I love it.
Oh yeah, no, that's perfect. That got a laugh out of me. But what I like here, and I don't think I noticed before this part, was that the artist took care to draw everyone in bulky jackets.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, any artist can put a jacket on a character, but everyone's belly's a little rounder to suggest they're in multiple layers. It's cold wherever Bluffington is.
There's a real illustrated storybook look to this whole series. Like, you could take a still frame from any shot in this show, and it would look like a storybook illustration.
Yeah, you're right.
It's very light colors and very purposefully drawn designs here. It's really kind of this almost kind of watercolor look to it that you don't see that often. And it's a really nice looking show.
It is a nice looking show, and it really shines here now that they can add Christmas decorations and snow everywhere. But when they get home, there's a big, loud, angry crowd surrounding their house now. There's a traffic cop, a news van, and Doug has to push his way through to find officers taking Porkchop away in handcuffs and a muzzle, while Doug's parents just stand behind him and just hold each other sadly. Not mad or anything that they're taking their dog away from him, but
they're not very by Doug's insistence, they're not very involved.
I guess you're right. Yeah, I'm thinking, wow, these parents are being really passive about this whole situation. But yeah, you're right. Doug kind of insists that he's my dog. I'll be the one to help him. But for now, here's the former mayor announcing, thanks to me, the children of Bluffington are safe from this brutal trained killing machine. With that, and then he's got backup singers. He brought the jingle choir with him.
That brutal killing machine.
They take away Porkchop despite Doug's protests, and later he's asking his parents, can they even do that? Dad tries and fails to reassure him. But again, neither's parent is really jumping to do anything about it. Just, sorry, son, and beloved family pet, our hands are tied.
Yeah, they're going to put him to sleep. What can we do?
Well,
I wouldn't worry too much, son. This time of year, everybody's thinking about peace on earth and goodwill toward dogs.
Douglas, are you sure Porkchop was just trying to play with BB?
Of course, Mom. You know Porkchop. He wouldn't hurt a flea.
The voice of Doug's parents are Becca Lish again, his mom, and dad is Doug Prius, who's mostly known for this, but on Thundercats, he was Alluro, one of the evil lunatics from the moons of Plundar. And starting in 1999, he was the voice of the titular character in the Fred on Your Head show. That's P-H-R-E-D, Fred, the mascot of Noggin.com.
Yes.
Who lived in the dot of the URL.
Yes, I had siblings young enough that Noggin was on all the time when it premiered, and I didn't know that. Fred on Your Head. Huh.
Neither did I. I did not watch a lot of Noggin. I kind of missed the Noggin boat and jumped right into Gas when that started. I was in college by then, so I was very interested in Wild and Crazy Kids reruns and missed Noggin.
Yeah, don't need no 3-2-1 Contact reruns when I got Legends of the Hidden Temple right here.
Well, 3-2-1 Contact reruns also interested me. Is that what was on there? It was 3-2-1 Contact?
It was a lot of old PBS stuff, yeah.
Oh, man. Maybe I did miss something. I think it's funny that it's the mascot who lives in the dot of the URL because it's 1999. Dad answers the door and comes back with a letter for Doug from BB's father's lawyer, who's pressing charges against the dog. And Doug says it's ridiculous, but not for the same reason I think it's ridiculous, because it's charges against the dog.
Oh, that dog has a social security number.
You're probably right.
That dog is legally recognized by the state.
No, Doug thinks it's ridiculous because Porkchop's a nice dog, and that's the idea that sets off a light bulb in his dad's head. Oh, we can get everyone to sign a petition saying what a nice dog Porkchop is. And I'm thinking, man, I know y'all are in 1993, but they say that about every mass killer. Oh, he seemed nice.
Jeffrey Dahmer helped me with my groceries once.
Right. And here's where Doug decides, because Porkchop is his dog and his best friend, he wants to take the initiative to get the signatures. So he goes around his neighborhood, starting with his next door neighbor, Mr. Dink.
Well, of course I'll sign, Douglas.
All right.
I just wish Tippy was in town. I know she'd want to sign, too.
Also voiced by Fred Newman.
It's very expensive.
Yes. Greg, this is also from the Doug Wiki with no citation, but have you ever read the name DINK is supposed to stand for Double Income No Kids?
Income No Kids, yes. When I figured that out, my little nuclear bomb went off in my temple.
Yeah.
Like in the cartoons. Like, my mind was blown.
What a weird joke to hide in a cartoon about adolescence. But Mr. Dink happily signs Doug's petition, adding he wishes his wife Tippy wasn't on vacation so she could also sign it. Tippy is the current mayor of Bluffington.
Yes.
They alluded to that back at the radio station, where the former mayor has her face on a dartboard.
That's not menacing.
No, and that's how I imagined every talk radio studio. But after that, Doug doesn't have much luck getting signatures. The adults either don't want to get mixed up in it, or they think it's inappropriate on Christmas. This is supposed to be a happy time. This isn't happy.
These characters are important because they're going to come back, and when you learn more about them, the reaction here seems incredibly cold.
It does seem incredibly cold, and Doug the show was never afraid to get real like this to kids, which is saying something considering how quirky this show's universe is.
Yeah, we haven't even gotten into the Christmas pastries that are also weapons.
Oh, no. Doug passes a store with a TV in the window showing a news reenactment of the dog attack, and it's ridiculous. But first off, y'all, the local news doesn't do reenactments. Or at least it sure the hell shouldn't, because, like, America's Most Wanted or Unsolved Mysteries territory, not on the local 5 o'clock news.
Especially not a reenactment that requires a very specifically trained dog.
Right. And secondly, I think this is the part of the episode where I started to ask myself, how much of what we're seeing is Doug embellishing? Because every episode of Doug is framed around him writing in his journal. Is this whole show just the version of his life that he's writing, and what we're seeing may be very thinly stretched?
Oh, that is getting into some it was all a dream territory right there.
We are. Because we can see his daydreams. That's a big part of the series, but I don't think at this part of the episode we've seen one yet.
No.
But that, like Doug's outfit in this, is a layer upon another layer. And now I'm wondering how deep this rabbit hole goes. But we'll kind of touch on that a bit later. But for now, Doug tries to visit BB at the hospital, but is stopped by her dad, who says she's much too traumatized to talk to anyone right now.
Porkchop didn't mean to hurt BB. He was just playing or something.
Well, I think we'll let the court decide whether putting an innocent girl in the hospital is just playing with her.
BB's elitist father, Bill Bluff, also voiced by Doug Prius, is the richest man in Bluffington, and we will see more of his influence later. But he straight up tells Doug he doesn't like dogs. They don't have any money. They don't even know what money is.
I'm pretty sure. Well, Porkchop does have money, and he does know what money is. There's just this. I want to jump to it because this is this amazing scene near the end of this episode. But we'll wait.
Okay, that satellite dish didn't pay for itself. You do have a point.
Yeah.
But neither Mr. Bluff nor this show is pulling any punches. And here, Doug tells us via his journal he needed help and he knew just who to turn to. And here's where we finally take a trip into one of Doug's daydreams, as evident by the iconic, I'm imagining this wind whipping sound like a whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. That's it. Well done. Whom Doug turns to happens to be 3 imaginary versions of himself we've seen in previous episodes. We have Race Canyon, the Indiana Jones stand-in. We have the superhero Quail Man. And the British secret agent Smash Adams.
You thought The Avengers was an ambitious crossover.
Well, and this all together on the screen at once, this is the only time this has ever happened in the history of Doug, both Nickelodeon and Disney.
Yep.
So they've all been summoned by Doug himself. This is a meeting he set up with his imaginary alter egos in his brain as a means of working out how to bust Porkchop out of the dog pound. This is how he plans his out. Now, there's this fan theory that explains Doug's daydreams as having a mental disorder. I don't know about that. I still daydream a lot. I'm 40. Not quite as vividly as Doug, but that's because this is a cartoon. It's the same as Calvin and Hobbes. It's an artist trying to show us what a vivid imagination looks like by kind of hyper-exaggerating it.
Yeah, I don't buy into most of that kind of Ash is in a coma in a hospital in the world of Pokemon, or the only one of those that ever is actually true is Saint Elsewhere.
Yep.
Everything else is just malarkey.
Hey, cousin Tommy. Yeah, you're right. That's the only one that pans out. But this show certainly made me feel better about it by kind of presenting daydreaming as not a weird thing and to be ashamed about, but maybe learn to control it better than these kids. So I'm very thankful for this show. And I don't put stock into those fan theories either about the whole series about a kid who's crazy. That's not helpful.
No. And it's not fun.
It's really not.
It's not good TV.
It's not good TV. It's not good clickbait.
Doug will return in a moment. Nicktoons are now at Pizza Hut. Nickelodeon's Doug, Rugrats, Ren and Stimpy on their own kids' pizza pack. You get a personal pan pizza, glasses, and a magic motion cup. Collect all 3. Each pizza pack is $2.99 only from Pizza Hut and Nickelodeon.
You're watching Nickelodeon. And now back to Doug.
So it's Smash Adams who helps Doug think to himself he needs someone technical to create a gadget to help bust out Porkchop, and that prompts him to visit his pals, the Techie twins, Al and Moo Sleech.
We think we may have just the thing for you, Doug Funny. During Christmas break, we have worked out many devices here in our father's bakery that combine the delicious flavor of holiday baked goods with state-of-the-art weapons technology.
Voiced by Eddie Korbick, who's prominently a stage actor, most notably in the original Broadway cast of The Little Mermaid as Scuttle, and in A Christmas Story as Santa Claus. And he was an understudy in Wicked to Dr. Dillamond and the Wizard. He's both twins here, Al and Moo, whose dad is a baker, a source of shame for them in an earlier episode, but here they use his bakery to create their own devices disguised as dessert, including a smoke bomb cupcake, which they present to Doug.
It's not even devices. They're very specific. These are weapons.
Yes, they use the word weapons.
They use the word, these cakes, these pastries, these little candy cane things. We don't see how they're weapons, but all of them are lethal.
Yeah. This is but including the smoke bomb cupcake, which they present to Doug to use at the pound to distract the guard. So now Doug, accompanied by Skeeter, go to the dog pound where there's a big sign at the guard's desk, no cupcakes.
Hey, Mike, what's your favorite part of Christmas? Mine's always the jail heist.
Mine too. No cupcakes. It's like the anti-Deus Ex Machina. Well, if the cupcake's not going to work, Doug signals to Skeeter, who pretends to faint.
And the guard pays zero attention to Skeeter. He's much more enamored with this cupcake.
He is. Even cares about the sign behind him. Maybe that's what. Maybe that's it. The guard gets distracted by cupcakes. That wasn't a sign he put there. That's a sign management put there.
No cupcakes, because this guard is just gonna go to town.
Now I know your weakness. And it allows Doug to sneak inside and find Porkchop. So there's a helpful blue hound dog who looks a dead ringer for Foofer. Points out a room at the end of the hall labeled Very Bad Dogs, inside of which he finds a long spiral staircase eventually leading to another room labeled Very, Very Bad Dogs. And this reinforces the point, maybe we're actually seeing the embellishment in Doug's journal, but I'm game. Maybe. I wouldn't put it past Bluffington to have very, very bad dogs at their dog pound, like 5 stories below the surface level, but
he did get in here by giving a guard a cupcake that's also a smoke bomb.
Very true.
Like, we are just beyond any sense of reality.
The Very, Very Bad Dogs room is a dark cell with a dim red light and a smaller, darker cage where Porkchop's being held. But Doug finally trips an alarm and is kicked out, leaving the tearful Porkchop behind. Back at home, he starts to remember his past Christmases with Porkchop. Oh, here's the Christmas part of the episode, everyone.
Yeah, you got there.
We did it. This in the end, and that's it. This is where I remembered, oh yeah, it's a Christmas special. I'm watching this for my podcast. There's kind of a Christmas Carol vibe here. He remembers the Christmas he got Porkchop as a puppy who was wrapped in a box. And hey, don't wrap pets in boxes.
No.
They're much more fun when they can breathe.
Don't give pets unless you, the parent, are ready to dedicate yourself to the pet.
Absolutely.
On Christmas.
Then Doug remembers last Christmas when Porkchop gave Doug his iconic journal, followed by a vision of Christmas yet to come at Porkchop's rainy gravestone under a tree.
Like, they are very explicit. Like, this isn't Porkchop went to doggy jail. Pork Chop is going to be put down if Doug doesn't save him.
Yeah, Pork Chop's Tiny Tim. Shouldn't BB be Tiny Tim? She's the one with the cast on her leg. But I'm jumping ahead.
Yep.
Next, we head to the courthouse where we see BB's dad imploring his pal, the judge, to make this short because he's missing a Christmas party. And this is the adulthood that Nickelodeon very often presented as if to say, be better people than this when it's your turn to be the adults.
Exactly.
And we're trying, man.
Trying.
Trying is the key word here. We're
capital T, trying.
Yes. Some of us. But Pork Chop is brought in with that muzzle again to audible gasps. And he's escorted to the defendant's seat. I noticed Patty sitting right behind Doug with his parents, which is nice to see that even though she's barely been a part of this, she's got Doug's dog's back.
Yeah.
And we hear from an expert witness dog psychologist who claims Pork Chop's unstable. Meanwhile, Pork Chop's trying to show Doug using charades what actually happened at the lake again.
Gotta teach that dog to write.
Seriously, he can do everything else as we're about to find out. But first, now the prosecution brings in BB, who's wheeled in on a wheelchair with a cast on her leg. And back in Doug's head, all of his alter egos are telling him, you didn't say bitter that hard. You're toast. Take a plea deal, and they start arguing till Doug shouts at himself, quiet!
I'm curious if I missed something, because I don't know if BB's like legit hurt or if this is something her dad is making her play up. I don't fully understand this.
I am pretty sold that it's her dad making a big deal. And she kind of hints at it here. She's up there. She's recounting what happened on the stand, finally admitting, oh, it sounds worse than it really was, before she can even finish that thought. The prosecutor cuts her off. So I think it's her dad just making a big, it could be some corruption here, but it also could be, oh no, my poor baby, what happened? Oh, a dog bit you? I'm going to get that dog for you, sweetie. I think it's more of a case of she can't really speak for herself when she's got daddy right there.
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, her dad's lawyer cuts her off. Why doesn't Pork Chop have a proper lawyer to object this? It's just Doug, who wants his turn to ask some questions, despite Mr. Bluff saying his baby girl suffered enough, and the judge going along with it. Isn't she a brave girl? Whole town's crooked. Tippy Dink shouldn't have left.
No.
Doug finally asks the judge, doesn't Pork Chop get to tell his side of the story? But he's a dog.
Yes, but he's a part of our community, too. Like everybody here. Well, maybe not the biggest part, but, I mean, isn't Christmas when we're supposed to show how much we care about others? Show how much we care about everybody in the community?
And here we get to the scene that ruined me. It ruined me so much, I transcribed the entire thing.
Oh, okay, go for it. I have part of it, but
as Doug pleads with the people in the court that Pork Chop is a good dog and deserves to be heard.
Yes.
Doug goes to the audience, finds people. These characters were only introduced in this episode. They're not characters we've gotten to know.
Nope.
This whole time. So this is all new information to us. And they're also the characters who Doug tried to sign a petition.
Which sheds a lot of light on that scene now.
Yeah. He goes, Mrs. Warts, when you went to Peakville to visit your Aunt Maxie, who babysat little Jimmy and Jeffy? Pork Chop. They let a dog babysit these children.
Yup.
And Mr. and Mrs. Larkin, when your house burned down, who was there the next morning with hammer and nails and a big batch of cookies too? Pork Chop.
Can't talk, but he's got opposable thumbs.
Got opposable thumbs. He's building houses and baking cookies. Somebody in the crowd speaks up. He lent me $20.
Right. Dog.
Which goes directly against BB's father's statement of dogs don't have money. They don't know what money is.
Porkchop knows what money is. Oh, I didn't think about that until right now.
Yeah. Then another woman speaks up. He helped me fix my transmission.
Right? I can't fix my own transmission.
I don't know what a transmission is. And then a man stands up. He saved my hair. I don't know what that means.
Last haircut he got, he made it into a toupee. Suddenly everyone realizes Doug's dog is the town's George Bailey.
And Judge Peterson, this is the best part.
Yeah, the judge.
And Judge Peterson, who was there after your daughter got in that accident? Who taught her to walk again? What?
The bipedal dog did, of course. That one's my favorite.
That's so wild. Doug's having just these normal kid adventures, and anytime Porkchop's not off screen, he's helping car crash victims recover their ability to walk, and he's building houses, and he's lending money. And what is Porkchop? What is he?
I want to watch the Porkchop show now. You're right. Doug's over here. There's a dance coming up, and I can't dance.
All these people who were so uncaring and venomously against Porkchop, he built their houses and helped their daughter regain the ability to walk.
And they're just looking over it because he's a dog.
We should give him a lethal injection.
Thanks for your help. And here's where it makes the judge finally agree to reconvene at the lake, where Doug asks BB, where were you exactly? And Patty finally gets another line in, pointing out the pine cone still sitting on the ice. And BB, now on crutches, hobbles out to it, and here we go again.
Unsupervised, nobody's following her to see what she's looking at.
And again, the sign fell into the water there, so Porkchop knows the ice is thin, and he tries running out after her again. But this time he's got security guards holding him on a leash. He's panicking, and Mr. Bluff immediately says he's doing it again.
Who cares if my daughter would have been a paraplegic without him?
But now BB actually does fall into the thin ice, and with everyone in shock, Porkchop dives in and rescues her. Oh, and everybody immediately forgives the dog again.
Ooh. And then the dog barks at a cat, and everyone forgets about the time Porkchop performed CPR on their grandmother.
Right, pretty much. We cut to a crowd back in front of the news cameras as Patty gets to explain.
That's what he was doing? He was trying to keep BB away from the thin ice. Porkchop!
And the dog's labeled a hero again for a weekend. Gets his name cleared in the papers, and all Christmas Day, people come by to apologize and thank Porkchop, including BB and her dad. And hey, BB, where's your cast? Now, the Doug Wiki, bless their hearts, called this a technical goof. Nah, man, that's intentional. BB was fine.
Yeah, probably.
But I don't blame her. She's clearly overcoddled by her dad and everyone around her to the point where they won't even let her speak for herself. So don't do what Bill Bluff does, parents. But to his credit, he wants to repay Porkchop, who apparently asks, in some form, he asks for a fancy Christmas dinner for all the dogs in the pound. I guess Doug translated it, or because he didn't learn how to write yet.
It's a pretty specific wish there.
Yeah.
Porkchop says he wants a pineapple with wieners stuck to it somehow.
Some kind of toothpicks going into the pineapple. And Doug tells us the former mayor used his radio show to find new homes for all the dogs.
What?
That's what he said. I guess all of the dogs at the pound, because the Christmas dinner's for all the dogs he met at the pound.
Yeah, and guess nobody came to, because naturally when you want a dog, you go to the pound and get a dog.
Right.
So I'm thinking either the former mayor paid people to take in dogs.
Oh, could be.
Or Bluffington has suddenly opened up a new sausage industry.
It could be. They have a newfound appreciation for all the dogs after the one that saved all their families saved one more kid.
Oh, right. Pork Chop. He fought in the war.
And we end with Mr. Bluff himself carving the roast beast. I mean, giving the toast to Pork Chop. The greatest hero Bluffington has ever seen.
Yep. They sing... What do they sing?
They sing Deck the Halls.
Deck the halls with balls of holly.
They sing Deck the Halls. Pork Chop is in a Santa costume. They just got it to be a Christmas special under the wire.
And that's it. That's Doug's mostly heartwarming and secretly educational Christmas story. We get one last image before the credits roll of a Christmas card of sorts showing Doug's family on Christmas morning. Doug receives a new banjo, Pork Chop gets a new Walkman, and their Christmas tree is topped with an ornament of Mr. Dink's face. Did you catch that?
I did not.
Mr. Dink's in the star on top of the tree or the top ornament, one of the two.
Oh.
And on one close to the bottom, I think it's Doug's assistant principal, Mr. Bone, who wasn't even in this episode.
Yeah.
Weird tree.
Weird tree. So this episode was written by Ken Scarborough, who was a regular writer for the show. Also wrote for Saturday Night Live between 2000 and 2004, and is the current head writer for Sesame Street.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, since 2017.
Okay.
The directors, Paul Sparigano, I think I'm pronouncing that right, and Marano Bushman. Marano Bushman doesn't have a lot of directing credits. Mostly did storyboard stuff for shows like Rainbow Bright, Super Mario Brothers Super Show, Camp Candy.
Oh, Camp Candy.
Captain Planet and the Planeteers. Paul Sparigano also directed a few episodes of Daria, but he was also, as an animator, worked on a Advent Calendar Hall of Famer, Deck the Halls with Wacky Walls.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Wow.
He also did a special in 1987 as an animator, Santa Bear's High Flying Adventure. Are you familiar with that one?
I am. That's on my to-do list.
John Malkovich's Santa Claus?
Yep.
It's amazing.
Oh, I probably have to slide that in next year. Yeah. Maybe in the summer. We'll see. I'll find a good spot for it. Thank you for reminding me about that. But any final thoughts on Doug in general or specific to his Christmas story?
Well, it's barely a Christmas story.
Yeah.
It is very much a story set in winter, and they took advantage of that. There was another Christmas special, Christmas episode in Disney's Doug, which I don't know if it's better or worse, but it's definitely more Christmassy.
Oh yeah.
It starts with a How the Grinch Stole Christmas spoof.
Oh, that's right.
But otherwise, it's a pretty typical episode of Doug. It's very sweet, very human, but also kind of unexpectedly weird. I think that defines the Doug experience.
It really does. That's a good period to the end of the sentence. That is Doug, at least on Nickelodeon. Very nice summary. Well, Greg, thank you so much for coming on. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Thank you. And if people want to divert your attention with a smoke bomb cupcake and feigning ill, where can they find you on the internet?
Well, my YouTube channel is The Paparina. You can find me by searching Knickknacks. That's Nick Knacks. I also do videos on other subjects. I take requests. I'm doing a monthly series on the Goosebumps series of horror books. You can also find me on Twitter at pop_arena, and where I often retweet funny clips of Alex Trebek.
I cannot recommend Greg's work enough, Knickknacks, and the rest of the Pop Arena, but I am putting links in the show notes on this episode. You can find those anytime at adventcalendar.house. There you'll also find links to say hi to me on Twitter and Instagram, and I'll see y'all again in a couple of days. Until then, for Greg Stevens, from a dark box inside another dark box in the basement of a pound for very, very bad dogs, this is Mike Westfall saying, watch out for that icy patch.
And now, these messages.
Hey, movie fans! Have you ever wanted just one more adventure from your favorite film heroes? Ever imagined an alternate entry in your favorite movie franchise that didn't suck? Then Sequel Quest is the podcast to make your wildest cinematic fantasies come true. Every episode, Adam, Jeff, and Jeremy pitch imaginary sequels, prequels, and reboots to your favorite movie franchises like E.T. the Extraterrestrial, cult classics like Surf Ninjas and the Monster Squad, famous flops like Jupiter Ascending. How about a third Tim Burton Batman film, or getting back on the ice with the Mighty Ducks? With over 100 episodes in our archives, you'll definitely find a favorite as the SQ crew reminisce about the films and find creative, cool, and wacky ways to continue the fun on the silver screen. Sequel Quest is presented by the Retro Network and can be found on any of your favorite podcast apps. Just search Sequel Quest and prepare yourselves for fake movie fun at its finest.
Do you long for those casual Friday nights spent in on the couch, cuddled up with a blanket, maybe some delivery pizza without a care in the world? Then I have the podcast for you. Hey, I am Matt, and I am the host of TGI Podcast. As a product of the 1990s, I want to go back and take a look at all of the classic TGIF shows, as well as many other classic sitcoms from that era, to determine if they truly are a holiday classic. We've got you covered with Halloween and Thanksgiving in the fall before we go full steam ahead with Christmas in December. Come give us a listen if you want to take a trip down 90s Nostalgia Lane.
Next time on the Advent Calendar House.
What do you want with me?
You will be haunted by 3 spirits. I'd rather not.
Disney's A Christmas Carol.